Hey, welcome to my podcast. I'm Jordan Hernandez, and I'm lucky to be here with the BCI victim, Elena Lundeen, correct? Right.
Lundy, yep.
Today, we'll be talking about the importance of how slavery is real and how it's still around today. More than 40 million people are in current slavery, with 10 million of them being children. So let's just start with a few questions. So, Elena, just tell me exactly what you do.
So my background, thanks for having me on the podcast. My background is I'm a nurse. I've been a nurse for 30 some years. I've worked with victims of crime through my nursing career. I spent most of my time on a helicopter, worked overseas, was attached to the Navy and the Marine Corps. And then throughout my career, I've worked with victims of all types. Trafficking victims primarily pretty much came across in my practice. When I came to North Dakota, I was hired to be the North Dakota Human Trafficking Navigator. So assisting any identified or potentially identified victims, adult and child and elderly here in the state of North Dakota, connecting them to services. And when the Bureau of Criminal Investigations started their victim services unit, they hired me and my partner, Jill Crone, who has a history and background in corrections and trauma. We started the victim services unit. So we work really closely with the drug task force guys, with all of our agents and all of our partnering affiliates throughout the state. If a victim of trafficking or suspected trafficking is identified, regardless of the age, we make sure that services are connected, that investigations are going forward. And if it gets to the prosecution side, does it qualify for federal or state or both? And we work with those victims from surviving to thriving, hopefully connecting them to services. Personally, I am a thriver, have lived experience in this arena, unfortunately. And so I use some of my lived experience in assisting people who have been identified. And sometimes I tell my story, sometimes I don't, but my job is to make sure that they have a voice and some sort of justice that's right for them through the process of getting out of the game.
Well, that's a lot. But so with you being like I guess like having a past with it,
Mhm.
how does it affect you working in this position? Like when you go home, like does it really just like a mental, you know what I mean? Or
Sure. So what it does it do? So the moment I stop feeling is the moment it's time for me to do something else. That's just me though. So I'm a nurse, so I'm a healer. I didn't have the opportunity to speak up or have people who cared or who understood what was going on because I came from another country. So for me, helping people is good. I also look at it as a public health problem.
Mhm.
It is a global issue. When I go home at night, I'm not going to lie, there are times when it affects me. There are clients that I still stay in touch with. There are clients that I train with, also that I speak with, statewide and nationally. Um, does it wear on me? For sure it does, but there are some success stories, but success is always measured in its interventions, what we do for each other and how we help each other. But human trafficking, I'm sure you guys have studied, it has been going on since the 15th century. I mean, it's been going on for a long, long time. We have more slaves now
Than we
than we
did.
did during the time of Abraham Lincoln. So um,
Not
it's
good.
just, yeah, it's not good. So now it's pretty cool to be involved in like helping people thrive.
Yeah.
That's my role. And if I guess that's why I'm still around, is to do that. So
Well, that's really good because like a lot of people, when it wears on them, some people just quit, you know?
yep, for sure. And there are people I've worked with who have, or go back to the life, or go back to addiction, or go back, or unfortunately take their life. I've had people that, in my life that have had that I've worked with. So yeah, um, the I don't know what you want to be when you grow up, or anybody who's listening to this wants to be when you grow up, but when you work with people who have been hurt, it wears on you. But if you don't feel it for them, you shouldn't be in this game, in this business either.
Yeah. Well, it's still like, I guess it's sad, but at the same time, it's nice because you're helping, you know?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I play golf,
Yeah.
so I can hit that ball when I need to.
Yeah.
Relieve the stress. Yeah, I travel. I fly. So I have ways to I have outlets to let go of the steam. How about that?
Yeah. I guess that's really good with that.
Yeah.
So this is one of the questions I wasn't sure if you would want to answer or not, but
Mhm.
out of all like the cases and stories you've done, which one of them sticks out the most?
So every single one, so I saw that question, right?
Mm-hmm.
Every single one of them sticks out for me, you
Because
know,
they're
because each one of them is so different.
yeah.
The force, the fraud, or the coercion when it's an adult,
Hmm.
the continuous sexual abuse of a child when it's a child, the exploitation of an elderly. Each one of them, even when I look at my board of the cases that I have, I do have some unsolved cases. Um, I think the hardest, if I say the hardest ones are kids, then, I think about my adults. I have some adults, some kids that became adults who have been victims. I think it's the fact every case for me is hard because why would somebody use somebody, exploit their vulnerabilities, promise them something and sell them another bill of goods for their benefit? Why would a human being do that? You know, so having a child be sold for propane to pay rent, or having a child used or sold for a drug problem or for to pay off a debt, um that's always tough. That's always tough, and they don't see it as an issue. They're seeing as maybe they're providing for the family because it's history. Maybe their mom did it, their grandmother did it.
Yeah.
For my clients that I've worked with adult wise who didn't enter the life that way, the same theme is that someone filled a void in their life that they didn't have in their own home life.
Hmm.
And I think of many times when there was issues in my life too that I've been like, and I thought I found the right guy or the right person or the right friend or the right human, and they took advantage of that. So I guess, every single one of my cases tugs at me, and not that I can always identify with them because my exploitation and the way I got into the game is totally different from everybody else's. But the fact that somebody took advantage of what I was weak in, or what was vulnerability of someone or something else, that's kind of poopy. Ooh, I might make sure I don't say a bad word. That was kind of poopy,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. So since you're kind of bringing it up, if you don't want to answer it, it's totally okay. I'll take this part out. Do you want to share your story at all?
It's
If
hard. So it's hard for me. Um, I guess the best way to do it, because people love stories, right?
Mhm.
And people feed on the drama and all that. In my case, my story is that it was a family member that was a trusted family member who was basically grooming my brother and I to be sold. And so our grooming and luring began when we were very young. And that's usually how it happens, is that they groom for a long time.
Mhm.
And he eased his way into our family and became a trusted human for my parents. And I didn't live here in the United States, so I was from another country. So
So
in Panama, I was in Panama when this happened. So for all of you that's in Central America, history lesson. And so the pictures, the things that we were doing, he was leading up to having us sold.
hmm,
Um, when my brother, um, I mean, he just literally stepped in as was our like our second parent, because my parents were physicians and diplomats and stuff like that. So it doesn't matter where you come from, right? When it comes to trafficking, people think it's a certain person. He filled that void and he was there, and he was a trusted human, and he promised us that he would make sure that we always had somebody. And so I remember very vividly the moment where I think he was going to take us, because again, it's different from people here. Um, he provided us with a drink. that had drugs in it
Mhm.
to kind of subdue us. And my little brother, kind of noticed that. And he went down the stairs and was screaming. He ran out in the street and just screaming, screaming, screaming. And somebody heard. And, that's where law enforcement got involved. But the challenge for me was that back then, 1,000 years ago, because I'm a little older, the first question I got from my family was, "What did you do?" That it was hard. So that's why I identify very much with the Native Americans because it was a family person, and I spoke up. And as a result of my experience and everything that happened, I lost my family.
Yeah.
They took care of the matter in-house. Um, don't know exactly what happened, but I was sent away. I was sent to a boarding school in the United States. I got into trouble a lot when I was younger. I never really dealt with my trauma. We never talked about it.
Mhm.
And so I made challenging decisions in my older life. I'm trying to be real political here. Got involved in things that I shouldn't have. Um, never, never had to go to jail or serve time because there's always somebody there that helped me. But I, got involved with extracurricular activities that could have probably killed me many times over. And then there was, some cool people along the way that got me involved in other things. But I didn't deal with my trauma and my shame and my guilt until after my mom died, until one day I was speaking in a room of 300 people about trafficking and exploitation when I saw somebody that looked like my exploiter, my abuser, and I broke down on stage. So that was several years ago. So my story is really weird because we did not talk about it and it was pretty much thought of as I did something wrong.
Yeah.
And I was a shame and guilt to the family. And I didn't have a relationship with my family. And I felt like I ruined someone's life, or maybe I should just not spoken up. So that's probably why I do the work that I do now. Does that make sense without going into
It
super
does.
gory
It's
details?
really,
Yeah.
it's like, it's admiring, or I guess
Mm.
inspiring, because like, like so many people can get hurt and use that as an excuse for their
Mhm.
actions, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And for you to like become well, what you do, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
just,
There are
it's,
times though when it's hard though, because I
yeah.
see myself in some of the victims, and I have good days and bad days. I mean, I have a phenomenal husband who's very supportive.
Mhm.
I did go to therapy, but it took me a while. I went through like 12 therapists to get to the right therapist who got me.
Yeah.
Um, Drinking was not the good thing, getting involved in extracurriculars, but I was athletic in school. I was a high functioning, I mean, I was a golf swimmer. I got scholarships for swimming. I was an athletic person. I mean, I compartmentalized very well because that's how I grew up. And you just don't, but I lost my family and my support system. And so I can identify with a lot of youth who, especially the proud culture of the Native American youth here in North Dakota, of why it's so hard to come forward. Because I was literally ostracized and sent away, literally sent away to another country to study and make up for my sins. My
Yeah.
parents were really Catholic and Jewish, so
Oh,
uh,
so they
so it
were
was a big
pretty,
deal. How could this happen? Doesn't exist.
yeah. Yeah. So kind of how we were talking, how you were young and a lot of like they go after the more vulnerable.
Mhm.
More than half of sex trafficking is children, or they're like the other children. What are some ways that teens like this class could prevent from getting sex trafficked?
So it's highly controversial, when we do outreach, when I speak or when I talk or even do community events or been asked to do community events. I really wish that more parents or family members would come to these events when we talk about it. Um, Using my experience and the training that I provide, I always tell I tell young adults that communication is super important. Um, the internet hasn't helped much with communication. Um, so it's so much easier to talk to somebody you don't know or you think you know on the internet, and then they kind of groom you and lure you that way.
Mhm.
Communication with your caregiver, your parents is super important. Like, we didn't have the technology that we have now, but I wish my parents would have asked me more questions. And these are things I tell parents, right? Ask your kid questions, be that helicopter parent, even though they get freaking annoyed with you. With the internet, ask them what apps they have on. But I also tell you, what does a healthy relationship look like to you? And
That's
that's a
actually
big
that
thing.
that's actually one of my questions also with
Yeah.
that is it or when being in a relationship, is it possible to get trafficked by your partner?
Yeah,
It's
for sure. Oh my God, yeah. Oh my God, yeah, I know. When I sit back and go through my stuff, I'm like, ooh, I made some poor choices in boyfriends.
yeah.
Because I modeled and role modeled some things that I saw. That intimate partner violence, that fixer, a broken soul fixer, somebody, I have great family and all that. It's just, you know, my parents were very involved in my life, but not so much. There are some things they wanted to talk to me about and some things I didn't want to talk to them about. And also, but for me, it was like I didn't know what a healthy relationship looked like, and I didn't know what the green flags and the red flags were in a relationship. I thought, like, I talk to kids now, and sexting is part of a relationship. It's not. It really isn't. It's not consensual. I was a victim of bullying when I was younger because I was super, my body image and all that kind of stuff was super, my thing. And, I was a jock and all that. Um, I didn't have safe people to talk to at school. Like I went to a Catholic girls' school, all girls school. Like I'm not going to go to a nun. I talk to a nun. I talk to some of the students and they're like, I'm not going to my future, that.
Yeah.
So it's like with Chantel and Miss Swigert, secure resource officer, like she seems to be a really good, safe human. I just didn't have safe humans. It's embarrassing, right? And I didn't know what I was looking for. So teaching you guys from early on what a healthy relationship looks like and what an unhealthy doesn't, but what a healthy relationship looks like
Yeah.
is super important. And then if somebody creepy or cringy is trying to ask you stuff, youth do a really good job in like blocking them and stuff like that. But man, they do their homework and prey on your vulnerabilities. They do. So maybe not putting everything out there.
Yeah.
And, that's the big thing. But it's hard when you've got a shitty home life. Oh,
No, no, it's fine. They're
when you
junior,
get a,
so it's okay.
when you get a bad home life and somebody says, hey, I get it. I understand you. And then they tell you stories that are similar to yours. That's the grooming and the luring.
Hmm.
I would say it's better to talk to someone who's actually you can see them and talk to them. But I did have pretty crappy boyfriends that pass you around or share you, and that's usually not good either. But having that safe human you can talk to is super important.
Yeah, and it's just sad because someone you trust so much, you know what I mean, that to do that. It just, but that's with not just relationships, like intimacy wise, more like
Intimacy, yeah.
friendships and
Yeah.
even family, you know. So
Yeah.
just learning at a young age
Yeah. What
what
does
a
a healthy
good human
relationship looks
is.
like?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and that should be threaded in the curriculum, threaded in through parent teacher conferences. Um, you're doing a podcast. I admire you for doing a podcast and getting the word out. But sometimes some parents sometimes don't want, like my parents, they did not want to talk about it. They're
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna give you a book.
Well, see,
You
and
know what I mean?
the weirdest thing about that is though is like it I'm religious myself, but a lot of religion, I guess, like it's hush hush. We
Oh,
don't
for
even
sure.
you know what I mean? And
For
that's
sure.
I feel like that's not how it should be, you know?
Mm-mm.
That's just in general, you should learn about that when you're little, you know? I have a little sister and she's about to be 7, and for her to learn what a healthy relationship is, I feel like is very important.
She's
Maybe
gonna
not
look
so
up to
much on
you.
the so much not on the intimacy side, but like for what a friend is, or
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Oh, for sure, for sure. I mean, I was in a gang. I was in a gang when I lived in DC. I mean, you look what you're missing at home, but also it's also the duty of the parent. I'm so different from everybody else, but parents, if they seem that they have issues too, they need to like seek support too. But here in North Dakota, it's very
Hard.
hard. Yeah,
So
rural.
and you know what I mean? And we have such a small school that like I don't
You do.
want to tell someone something because it's,
I know
you know,
everybody's in your business here.
I- all the time. And that's a thing
100%.
I feel like we learned that at a young age. I was in sixth grade being like, I can't say something, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's
It's
just
it's almost like, yeah, it's almost having like relationship humility, right? Like having some humility and how do we teach parents? How do we teach students having that humility, what that humility looks like, being humble and stuff like that. But the internet, COVID didn't help that. It's the platform for trafficking has changed to online, I think a lot. And then drugs, the trafficking of drugs that we have.
yeah,
So
and kind of like you said, how parents need to come to these talks as well, because
for sure.
it's their first time being parents too, so they don't know fully how to prevent that. Like as a parent, I would have no idea of how I'm gonna keep my kid from not getting trapped. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Or just being exploited by somebody, right?
Yeah, that too. It's just like you don't get taught that. You know what I mean?
I always tell parents, don't freak out.
Yeah.
If your child comes up to you and says blah blah blah, blah, you're like, okay, like take a deep breath.
Well, yeah, me and my mom were really close. So say something was like that to happen, talk to her about it. She might flip just a little bit, but like understanding me, I guess, would be the most important thing, I think.
Yeah.
And that's just for teens. I mean, they just really want to be understood. And
Yeah, I have a slide on one of my presentation. There's like the top 10, right? What youth always says, like we want to be heard. We don't want to be judged. We
yeah,
know how to make our decisions. Sometimes we need structure. When I work, I also moonlight at home on the range, as a nurse. And when I talk to some of the youth or when I've done, groups and all that, they'll be like, I wish my parents would have given me just a little bit of more structure.
yeah,
You know what I mean? And
definitely.
yeah.
Because like I feel like there's that fine line of the balance, you know what I mean? Letting them
Yeah.
get to do a little bit of what they want, but then also having to kind of put the hammer down. And I feel like my parents are very good at giving me leadway, but if
Yeah.
I get too far, the chain will get tight.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And
And
the
I,
big thing I tell parent, I try to tell, you know, schools and parents and stuff like that is that we're all going to make mistakes, right? But if we have like someone we can go to for information or I had the best childhood. I had the best parents in the whole wide world. They knew that was back then, right? They knew what they could do and didn't know what they couldn't do. And plus to know that it was a family friend, that was hard. I know that was hard on my dad up until he died. And we talked about it before he died, but he felt like he failed me and didn't protect me. So I get it. I get it.
well, I just got a notification that our thing will end in 10 minutes.
I saw that.
Okay. So I'll just kind of
Sorry.
keep moving. But yeah, like it'd be hard, like we were talking about, to like trust someone so much for them to just betray you. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? And
for sure.
I don't know how I'd do with that either, because like big person on trust. So it's like
Yeah.
it's
And loyalty
yeah.
and friendship. Yeah. And they gotta be funny and they have to have their own bank account drive, you know what I mean? That stuff. So, but I'm a big people who get trafficked or exploited. We are big time people pleasers too, I think, many of us, because somebody took notice of us and took care of us. And now we feel like we owe them.
Yeah.
And so that's how that cycle of trafficking happens. That's where it happens, right? That's a fine line. I'm going to take advantage of that and may have you make me money or do
Almost
whatever.
feeling obligated to have to do. Yeah.
Right. Or maybe you're in a healthy relationship and the person's like, no, you don't owe me anything. You're good. I love you for who you are. That's a healthy relationship. But that's what we need to teach people in general. But when somebody says like, well, now you owe me because I gave you a car, I gave you this, I took you out.
Yeah.
When somebody starts doing that, when bullying you and stuff like that, that's when like the red flag should go off. And then I should go talk to my mom or talk to my teacher or talk to somebody like, I think I'm in a crappy relationship.
Just understanding that, like you said, the red flag.
Yeah. Yeah. That's how you prevent it.
Mhm.
It's like teaching it, putting it in parent teacher conferences, putting it out there,
Yeah.
and then talking about it. Like we talk about sex, we talk about don't go into people's cars, wear your seatbelt. Let's talk about this every day like a normal thing, that it's normal. Same thing with the internet. Then when it's not normal and cringy, who do we go to talk to about it? That's
Definitely.
it's
I feel
really
like
simple.
And it's hard though for I feel like even adults really like it's a hard conversation. You know what I mean? To
Yeah.
talk to a
Yep.
teen about not even just sex trafficking, but just all of it,
No.
all the
Yeah.
negative in the world. It's an awkward topic. Like,
Yeah. My
but
mom gave me a book, and then now we give KP students, here's a phone, Google it.
yeah. And that see, and I feel like how we're talking, I'm learning a lot by just this little bit of a podcast.
Yeah.
Um, but I got a couple more questions.
Go for it.
Deputy Swagger has given us an education on being aware of our surroundings. What are some things you can add to this?
Yeah. So she and I have talked and trained together. So Um, if something just seems off, if something doesn't feel right, kind of like what we've talked about this whole time, it's not what you feel is right, or someone's taking advantage of you or something like that, then go talk to somebody about it, a safe human. I don't care if it's an adult or even your own peer. I would hope that you would choose the right peer that
Yeah.
would want the best for you, right? Relationships with I mean, I had friends that just want to be my friend for who my parents were. So that's not cool, right? But if you have that one person you can go to peer to peer who can go talk to somebody, I've had a lot of disclosures happen when a peer said something's not right and they tell a school teacher or counselor or a church leader or somebody like that. So knowing that, doing that.
Um, that's actually that's good. So now that we've kind of talked about trafficking, I did write, do you mind discussing how and why? But I take it it's like how we kind of talked about this of kind of because your own story, right? Or
Mhm.
is there another reason behind it?
Of why I got into this work or
Yeah. Yep.
so I'm a nurse. I'm a healer.
Mhm.
So I was drawn to it.
Helping people.
Helping people. I was a helicopter nurse all my life. I took care of soldiers and stuff like that. So wounded people. This is not where I thought I would end up being. This is not in my plan. I was going to be a surgeon. I was going to do totally different what I am now. So I think the fates, faith, God, whoever you pray to, you just got to trust the future, throw it out there. I try to be real positive.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, it's my jam. I love my job. I
Yeah.
love working for the Bureau. I love doing what I do, and I love working with guys who get it too, who see
Yeah.
you as a human being. It's good for,
It'd definitely be cool to like just know you saved someone, just
yeah.
that feeling.
It's,
It's
yeah, it's more of like, I don't see myself as a savior. And my goal is not to rescue. My goal is to say, like, hey, I'm a safe person if you need anything.
yeah, like
Pretty much what I say. If you need
that's
anything, just holler. We'll figure it out.
mhm. And that's also what kind of what Officer Swagger's like is
Yeah.
not the savior, but more or less the
Yeah. I
safe.
want people to thrive. I'm a
Yeah,
thriver. I'm
yeah.
not a survivor. I'm a thriver. When people say they're survivors or they're survivor experts, I'm like, wow, that's awesome. I'm just a thriver. I'm living day to day.
Just chill. Yeah.
Chill. Exactly.
Well, alrighty. Thank you. I'm not gonna hang up yet, but I'm gonna end the podcast.
Okay.
So thank you, class, for listening. Um,